So I was in what you would call the military force part of the American empire. There's the military force and there's the administrative force. And this is how empire has always worked. You had the military go into a country and take over, and you have the administrative force come in and then run the country. They build over the rubble, and the political order that they put in place answers to whoever sent the army to destroy everything in the first place. And so this is what the US does. So they do it through the US military and contractors and everyone associated with that side. And then the administrative force is USAID. It's USAID, it's NED. The NED gets the client regime ready and puts them into power. USAID is the one trying to get people peeled away from whatever central government is operating in that country, get them peeled away and dependent on USAID. And then they can turn those people against the government who were previously dependent on the government. This is a trick that empire has used forever. And this is just the most modern iteration of this process. And so I was in the military force, Shane Brady was in the administrative force. The fundamental difference is at a very young age, I woke up and I snapped out of it. And I realized what I was doing and I got out. And I've been trying to make up for it ever since. I will never forget, and this is why I kind of sympathize with Shane here, because when I was 18, when I was in the military, I was a young Marine, and I was deployed to Japan, and we were going into the base, and there was a protest by Japanese people who wanted us out. And I said, why? I said out loud to someone next to me, and they agreed with me. I said, why are they so upset? We're here to protect them. That's actually how you think when you have that point of view. And I have no doubt that Shane Brady honestly thinks that he is doing something good by working for the administrative force side of American empire. He might not even understand that it is empire, or he might think that American empire is necessary, because there are people who think that. So I want to show you this TED Talk. Now, for me, I can't stand TED Talks, and this one is revolting, and you'll see why in just a moment, but it's by Thomas Barnett. He works for the US Department of Defense and also the Naval War College. So he works with the government. He's not just some random commentator. He has a say and influence over policy to some degree or another. And this is him talking about how America needs to reorganize its military force and its administrative force. And he spells it out explicitly. Let's listen.
If the United States fights somebody, we're going to be huge, they're going to be small, and if they try to fight us in a traditional straight-up manner, we're going to kick their ass. Which is why people don't try to do that anymore. There is no battle space the U.S. military cannot access. They said we couldn't do Afghanistan, we did it with ease. They said we couldn't do Iraq. We did it with 150 combat casualties in 6 weeks. We did it so fast, we weren't prepared for their collapse. I think we have an unparalleled capacity to wage war. I call that the Leviathan force. What we need to build is a force for the everything else. I call them the system administrators. What I think this really represents is the lack of an A to Z rule set for the world as a whole for processing politically bankrupt states. What does this mean? It means you gotta stop pretending you can do these two very disparate skill sets with the same 19-year-old, switching back morning, afternoon, evening, morning, afternoon, evening. Handing out aid, shooting back. Handing out aid, shooting back. It's too much. The 19-year-olds get tired from the switching. That force on the left, you can train a 19-year-old to do that. That force on the right is more like a 40-year-old cop. You need the experience. What does this mean in terms of operations? The rule is going to be this. That sysadmin force is the force that never comes home, does most of your work. You break out that Leviathan force only every so often, but here's the promise you make to the American public, to your own people, to the world. You break out that Leviathan force, you promise, you guarantee, you're going to mount one hell of a, immediately, follow-on sysadmin effort. Other differences, Leviathan, traditional partners, they all look like the Brits in their former colonies. Including us, I would remind you. The rest, wider array of partners, international organizations, non-governmental organizations, private voluntary organizations, contractors. You're not going to get away from that. Leviathan Force, it's all about joint operations between the military services. We're done with that. What we need to do is interagency operations. And you got to wage war here in such a way to facilitate that.
And some people will say, okay, well, that's just Thomas Barnett. He's just saying that. How do we know that that's actually official US foreign policy? Well, I was just talking about US aid, right? And US aid is a key component in counterinsurgency strategy. The US government, for many different departments, the US State Department, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which is where this manual is from, and the different branches of the US military, they have counterinsurgency manuals, and they're all basically the same. And if you type in US aid, you'll notice that 40 results are returned. And why is that? That's because they are part of the administrative force. When you're doing counterinsurgency, think about it. When the US is doing counterinsurgency, it's because their military force invaded a country, destroyed a government, put a client regime into place. Now they're trying to keep that one from being thrown out of power by an insurgency. So now you have counterinsurgency. And US aid is meant to come in there and take over all of the key essentials that people need on a daily basis: water, food, electricity, sanitation services, sewage, garbage collection, things like that, healthcare, education, communications, media. US aid goes in and they take over all of that. That's what they do. And even when the US doesn't invade a country, maybe they're using proxy militants, or maybe there's no militants at all. Maybe it's just an opposition that the US National Endowment for Democracy is building up and getting ready to take over. US aid will go in there and start peeling communities away from their dependency on the central government and getting them dependent on this Western-backed client regime that they're building up. This is how modern day imperialism works. And this is what Shane Brady had been doing for 15 years, possibly without even knowing about it. I think if you ask a lot of US soldiers, Marines, sailors, people in the Air Force, if you ask them, they will probably tell you that they think that they're defending the country. And so, I mean, they've been misled. They've been duped into it. Some people will go their whole career and never realize what it is that they're involved in.